Unusually for my generation, I didn't grow up watching Sesame Street. I had a Sesame Street playset, but I have no recollection of watching the TV show. So I'm quite keen to explore some Sesame Street and see what I missed out on. And I love watching educational shows because I grew up watching a lot of educational TV shows and cartoons, and I like to see, first of all, how I was educated if I can't really remember, and also how the younger generations are being educated. Now, Sesame Street, the Great Numbers Game, was released in 1998, so I would have been kind of prime audience. I was 6 at the time, and I don't remember it. I have no recollection at all whether I've seen it or not. But honestly, it's pretty terrible. It kind of feels like it's a bad internet video. It's not good. It started off promising. We have Elmo and the character who I now know is called Telly. I didn't know that, so I learned something, so that's a good thing. And 2 children, and they're inside of this game, and they have to find all of these numbers from 1 to 20. And that's a really interesting concept, but it is terribly executed. They do not utilize this whole game aspect and making a fun activity out of it. They don't do that very well at all, which is a shame because that's the kind of thing I would have loved to replicate at home, having fun with numbers. I can absolutely see children doing something similar, but it didn't work. And there are 2 reasons why it didn't work. The first is that they just didn't do it very well. And the second is that the numbers they were finding are not necessarily things you would find in the real world. For example, there are these 3 chairs. Yes, okay, you might have 3 chairs, but they're taxi chairs. They're the weirdest things ever. And that's not the most peculiar thing about this. To make it work, they should have been things that a person or a young child would quite commonly see out and about. And obviously that might get quite difficult when you go up to the higher numbers, but supermarkets exist, market stalls exist. You can get a punnet of strawberries with however many strawberries in the punnet. I don't know, that's the first thing I thought of, just trying to think of something that a child might see out and about. I don't know, 6 conkers lying on the floor. There are so many opportunities for learning and also observation, and they just completely missed out on that. And then the actual numbers themselves, before I start complaining about those, I do want to praise the fact that it's 1 to 20. Most children's TV shows that deal with counting will only go to number 10. And the fact that they've gone to 20, I think is pretty great. There are others, of course, but in general, it's 1 to 10. They've taken it a step further so that children can grow and develop as they watch it, if they choose to watch it. I kind of wish they wouldn't because it's really bad. The animation styles are all over the place. Pretty much every number has a different style, and it's kind of jarring and unnerving, and it's really horrible to watch, to go from one to the next, and it doesn't work very well. The transitions between each are not very well edited. Some of the animation styles are okay, but when you have horrible styles around about it, it's short-lived and not very satisfying. And then, as I said, the things that are actually representing those numbers, sometimes it's okay. For the most part, I think they've picked either really boring things or things that children can't relate to, things that don't make sense in the real world, so they can't then apply that knowledge. And that means that you're really limiting what they're learning and limiting their ability to take part as an active viewer and replicate this in the real world. So it's not good at all. Please tell me Sesame Street is not usually this bad. I was really, really surprised by the poor quality of the editing, of the choices they made to represent the numbers, of the lack of utilizing this numbers game that the children were playing. If they leaned more into that and made things more relatable, then it could have been good. It had so much potential, and the whole thing feels like an amateur early days of YouTube video. It isn't very good. Please tell me this is not what Sesame Street is usually like. Purely because I'm a very curious person. I need to find out more. I will watch more Sesame Street if something comes up. If I discover something that sounds like it could be interesting, I will take a look. This hasn't completely put me off everything. And I used to watch Elmo's World. I'd watch Elmo's World every morning before school. Loved that. So it can't be all bad. At least not everything with Elmo is terrible. But unfortunately, this is pretty awful. It's not good. And if I had a child, I have a cat, not quite the same thing, but if I had a child, I would not show them this. I wouldn't show them this at all. So either I never saw it, or I saw it and I mentally blocked it out. It isn't good. It's completely all over the place. They missed out on so many opportunities for engagement and learning, and unfortunately, it's just a huge letdown, and I don't understand the appeal. Maybe it's nostalgic for some people, but for me, it's not a good introduction to Sesame Street.